Hello and welcome to Epic BattleCry. This is the place where we cut through the crap, bring you the real deal in the gaming industry today. I'm your host, Tony Grice. These two jackasses are Daniel Kaiser and Brent Adams. And it is Thursday, August 14th, 2014.
I was born on a Thursday. Did I tell you guys that?
No, you
didn't. Yeah, last week, and I think maybe even the week before that. And I just wonder how many more weeks you're going to tell us.
I met this girl. No, sorry, that's wrong. I'm doing the 90s rap theme this week. I don't know.
You were about to go, I wish I was a baller, I wish I was a little bit taller, weren't you?
Yes. I wish I had... No, I'll save it for later.
I was going to say before we get too deep into that. Way too late. Anyway, we've got our question today comes from one Mr. Bengt-Robert Leine. Is that how you spell it?
That's how I would say it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's at Bent E Line at Epic at Twitter, and he says at EpicBattleCry, is there a way to marry, say, the fantastic story of something like The Last of Us with the open-endedness of a game like DayZ?
No.
And love Viking Bent.
Oh,
so, not the first time anyone's ever told me to get bent.
Yes,
as it turns out.
Or winked at you. But anyway, I think it's kind of an interesting question. DK, you want to start us off? Like, what do you think? Is there a way to take these really open-ended games that have to have some sort of, I guess, a slight anonymity to them, but give them sort of a really good core story that is tight and whatnot? What do you think?
Well, shit, if I can give you an answer in like 3 minutes here on EBC, I'd be working in game development. But, at the end of the day, this is, the proof is in the pudding. I'm just going to throw out a bunch of phrases. But no.
Please. Why don't you find a way to work in a bunch of Metallica song titles, too?
Well, let's ride the lightning for just a moment, guys. I mean, at the end of the day...
I'd rather jump in the fire.
There you go. Well, it's justice for all. But the bottom line for me...
you remain unforgiven.
Yeah. Is that you got
let's not do that.
Very different types of experiences, okay? The Last of Us, is a fantastically scripted game that is compelling because of the moments that it delivers through its narrative. Whereas the open-endedness of a game like DayZ allows you to be the storyteller. So to answer this question in a single word, I don't think there is a way to marry these two things, although that seems like a dream world. I mean, there are games that have significant amounts of story or a fun story. I think Bethesda really tries to create games that have like just the right blend of like, I'm following a story, there's all these side quests, and yet it's completely open-ended, so like you could just walk around like Skyrim and stuff like that. Good examples of how they kind of marry those two types of ideas. But because they are independent and because they are good at what they do, it gives them value, and I think you dilute the value when you try to merge them independently. So I mean, it's the same thing as asking, can one genre of music be the same as another genre of music, or one genre of film take the best aspects of another genre at some point you blur the lines and they just become what they are. So I mean, I'm sure there's people trying to figure this out, but and maybe as technology improves, there's more because a lot of games try to give the illusion of choice, which is what Bent was really kind of referring to initially in his tweets. The illusion of choice is you're going down a path and it's kind of choose your own adventure. Again, the Mass Effect series for me did a great job of that. But ultimately, in order to deliver that great experience as a scripted story, it needs to stay that way and give only a certain amount of variability for people, as they experience it, because they're trying to do something on this linear path. Whereas the open-ended games are best served when they make you the story creator.
So no.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Brent.
Yeah?
Are you going to take that long to say yes or no?
I will say yes.
Hey.
Right here at the front, and I would point to, yeah, absolutely. Can you do it? Yes, you can do it.
No, you can't.
Go play Red Dead Redemption. Go play Skyrim. Look at No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky is basically trying to do the exact thing that you're talking about doing. The kind of game that you're describing, something that has very compelling story, but is also open-ended in terms of gameplay, where the player can just go and do whatever it is that they want within the the confines of the game world, the game mechanics. There are a lot of people chasing that puck, and that is basically
reference.
That is like my dream game. I've talked about this on the show several times. What you're describing is the game that I've been hoping to play my entire life, and I think that we will get. I think that we will get there. One of the fundamental things that has to happen is procedural storytelling. Mm-hmm. In the same way that AI can be used to generate, the universe of No Man's Sky, planets, geography, biological life, flora, fauna, etc. In the same way that AI can be used to do those things, we will be able to teach AI how to tell stories, what makes for compelling stories, and it will go beyond the simple fetch quests of something like Skyrim to the point where we can get AI really understanding what makes drama interesting and compelling, and it'll be clunky at first and everything, but in time we'll get to the point where something like a text-based interface like with Skyrim could actually be pretty compelling on-the-fly AI-driven storytelling that would give you a real sense of having gone through some quest that the game is just generating at random. I think that we're going to get to that point pretty soon, and then moving beyond that, the question is how do you kind of get that immersive experience with like really great voice acting, really great performances and whatnot, and that's definitely a more complex problem. Mm-hmm. That's a lot more difficult to address. But I think that one thing that games could do, I think about like a game like a Skyrim as an example. Think about if there were a game
that was my example, by the way, and you still
yeah, well, and I think it's a good example. But as opposed to you pointing to that and saying this doesn't qualify, I point at that and say I think this does qualify. No, I said it did qualify.
It's just it's the
It's not the perfect.
Right,
it's not. Yeah.
I think that there's another aspect
of this.
Basically,
is the point.
Basically, I mean, come on, like what is it? Thursday? Is it Thursday again? The thing that I think is another thing that could be done here is user-generated content. Yeah. I think about games that allow the community to support them in really big ways, and I think of like what about a game that has that open-ended quality like DayZ does, but where players could get together and put together their own kinds of missions. You can put a character in the game that's going to tell you about some story that's going to launch you on this mission. You could record your own voice acting for it. You can put together all of the events within the world that would be necessary for that quest to come about, place all the items and everything that you would want to have in order to do that, and just let people go ape shit with it. Just let everybody, kind of create their own sense of like what stories would be, and a lot of it would be pretty mediocre, but there would be quality there. There would be people that would find really great voice acting talent and friends of theirs, or through connections online, and put together really, really compelling stuff. That the cream would rise to the top.
No, the proof's in the pudding. Yeah.
So I've heard. But anyway, I think that there are ways of making this happen right now, and I think it's mostly through fan support at the moment. Mm-hmm. We're already seeing the beginnings of AI-driven universes that will try to kind of combine those two ideas, and there are a lot of people chasing this. It's a very compelling idea, and I think that we'll get there sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, I think I sort of lean more towards Brent. I definitely think that it is possible. I do think that it is. At least I listen to but I do think that it is one of those things. I think the new hardware generation we're in, at least in terms of consoles and doing so much processing offtake onto the cloud and things like that, will allow us to see more things in the vein of like a No Man's Sky, where we can do these procedurally generated things, like in the case of it, it's the worlds and all this sort of stuff. But there's also, I think, like what Brent's sort of suggesting, that procedurally generated ideas, like concepts, like you sort of set up a character that has these traits, but then from there it can kind of all these different things can build off of that. I think we'll start to see more and more of that. Unfortunately, I think in the short term, it is kind of a no. It is. I think we'll sort of see games like the closest thing we'll see is something like a Red Dead Redemption or a Grand Theft Auto, which I think those are probably a little bit better examples than the one you brought up, Daniel, of Skyrim, which I think was a terrible example. But the I'm just joking. But in all seriousness, I think those games feel like they have there is definitely a cohesive compelling story there, but they basically just give you so many options to do that you feel as if it's completely wide open, when realistically it's just a really big world to do all these different things in, and it gives you that illusion of being completely open-ended, or at least, you know, more towards that, when realistically there's definitely a set of things that you can do and a set of end results that come from it, but it feels big because they've just done so much of it.
Right.
So you know, the fact is we get pretty good examples of this type of game now that's essentially, I think, sort of cheating the system, or, you know, you're faking it,
right?
But it's faking it pretty well, and I think people are really enjoying that. And just as time goes on, and as, you know, as the hardware and you know, programming
they
techniques,
won't have
things like
to
that,
fake it as often.
Well, and I think we will eventually get to a point where it is, you know, I think possibly get to that point where it is truly, you know, like organic. It'll do its own thing,
Right.
And then we'll have Skynet, and then we'll die.
I'll be back.
Anyway, I think that was. I think it's a great question. I think it's a really cool question from Viking Bent. And anyway, if you have other questions for us, make sure you send them to the old @EpicBattleX on the old Twitters there. And make sure you check us out on YouTube as well, because we'll be back tomorrow on Friday with our last episode of the week. And then, of course, if you're just catching up on this now and you missed maybe the ones from earlier in the week, we're going to have on the weekends. We've got our weekly wrap up that has everything from the week. So definitely
that's
check
audio
that out as well.
only. Just to be clear,
it is audio only, and we have little tidbits, like Daniel is telling us how to bake a pie this week.
And we're not listening.
It's a pot pie.
But now
okay,
he
now
has
I'm
to do
listening.
it because
Hold
it's
on.
officially we recorded that I said he did it, so he has to do it.